Hey, Sunshine Parenting listeners, and welcome to episode 157. Doing something different this week, and I'm actually doing a video version of this podcast in addition to the regular audio version. So if you'd like to see the video version, you can just click on the link in the show notes and find it there. So this episode is going to be different from my usual episodes. For those of you who are regular listeners, you know that most of my episodes are interviews with some amazing guests, and I have some really cool ones coming up. But I thought it was time here in mid-September to talk about give a personal update and share some insights. And also I want to invite you to be part of my next book. If you're one of my regular faithful listeners who really enjoy my podcast and my writing, I just have a special invitation for you. So first, personal updates. Probably the thing that's highest on my mind and what I've been hearing from people most about is these fires that are going in California right now. So my summer camp, Gold Arrow Camp, is located on Huntington Lake. And that was a part of California that was very, very badly impacted by the creek fire. And so last week was incredibly crazy and stressful, as basically you just kind of wait to see, what the fire hits and what it misses and which way the winds blow. And to make matters almost even more comical, while my husband, he was reinstated to the volunteer fire department just because of this fire, and went up there with a dear friend who is a battalion chief here in Fresno County. So they were up at the lake helping with the fire response. And I got a call on Tuesday afternoon from our county saying that there was a mandatory evacuation from one point up to my street. So I was home with just two of my kids, and it appeared based on the call that we were under evacuation. So my first insight that I want to talk to you about, first of all, we're all fine. Before I go on with that, we're all fine. We're back in our house. And actually, as it turns out, the evacuation was a mandatory evacuation up to the other side of our street. So we actually technically weren't evacuated, but I didn't know that at the time. So we left with some stuff. So my first insight that I want to share from this past week is just how we have so much stuff, and thinking about what we value. And when you are asked to have to really make quick decisions, what is it that you want to take with you? I found myself, of course, I always know that it's the photos, right? It's especially photos and albums of family members, especially from the pre-digital era. So I was prioritizing that. Also, just kind of those irreplaceable mementos, notes from my kids that I've saved, paintings that my kids did when they were younger or in their art classes. It was kind of interesting. Really, we had plenty of time because we knew that it wasn't like the fire was close, that it was just sort of approaching us. But it was interesting just as we looked around, thinking that there really wasn't much that we really, couldn't replace. You can replace clothing and furniture and all that stuff. So that was a really important and insightful thing. Really, another thing that's ended up happening because of that is when we came back and then kind of unpacked everything that I had packed up, which my sweet husband, who after being busy at the fire had to come home and help me unevacuate our house and hang back up things and everything. One of the things that I ended up doing this weekend was to go through all those albums. I have so many albums, like from my childhood and, all the way through high school and college, and then all the way through the early years of my kids being born, because my two oldest were pre-digital. And my third was kind of crossover, like her first couple years were before we had like a digital camera. So anyway, going through all those photos and just realizing that I do want to get them scanned, the ones that I really, really want to make sure I don't ever lose. So that was kind of helpful to just kind of do a little regroup on, if this is really important to me, I really can't pack up, 100 pounds of photo albums every time I need to evacuate. So that was one insight that I just wanted to share with you, is to think about what it is you value, and like, of all that stuff that's in your house, what would you really want to take with you if you only had 10 minutes to gather it up? Besides the people and the pets, who are of course the most important things, what else is there? And you start realizing that there isn't anything that would replace those people and those pets. At the same time that I was kind of facing this evacuation and possibly losing both my camp and my home to a fire, I have a friend whose home was robbed really, really badly, where they took even sentimental things, like letters, and that, again, just really makes you step back. She's very philosophical and very resilient about it. And, she was just reinvigorated by hearing the sweet voice of her 2-year-old grandson. But he just, again, was reminded that, wow, we really hold tightly to our stuff, don't we? And it's pretty darn fleeting, because you can lose it in an instant. You can lose, the home that you built and spent all this money on developing, or whatever you do, all this stuff you do. You can lose your business that you've worked on for 3 decades, in a second. So that has been one insight that I wanted to share with you this week. The second insight that I want to share is just the importance of remembering to prioritize the mental health of ourselves and our kids. Even before this pandemic, we've been in a crisis with anxiety and depression on the rise, and teen suicide on the rise. And I think that for many, the pandemic has just exacerbated it and made those pre-existing mental health things even worse. And so I really want to encourage us all to really take stock of how we're doing, how our kids are doing, and what maybe simple steps or changes we can make in our homes, in our families, for ourselves personally, to improve our mental health, not just so that we're not depressed or anxious, but so that we're actually flourishing or thriving. A lot of my research that I did for my thesis in psychology was about youth flourishing or well-being. And I've continued to follow all of the research in the field of positive psychology about really mostly simple things that we can do to just feel better in all areas. And I think sometimes the answers are right in front of us and we already kind of know them. It could be that we just need to exercise a little bit more, or get outside a little more, or find a better community of people where we feel supported. It could be that we just need to spend a little more time on those most important relationships with our spouse or our partner and our children and our parents. So there may be something simple, or it may be something a little more complicated. And, I, several years ago, was going through a very rough time, just really feeling like unsure of kind of everything that I was doing. And getting therapy was so helpful to help me reframe everything and really think through how I got myself to the point where I am, and what I could do to get back to feeling my best and at my best self. So, it takes a lot of work, but I just want to make sure that we're all remembering that way more important than how smoothly online school goes, or even what's going on with our businesses, many of which are really struggling during this time. What's way more important is that mental health of ourselves and the people we love, and making sure that we're prioritizing taking care of that. So my final insight may not apply to everyone listening, but I suspect it might, because if you listen to my podcast, my ideas and my kind of outlook might resonate with you. But if you don't know me well, you may not know that I have been a lifelong overachiever, overworker. So I really like to help other people. I really like to be in community with other people, and I work really hard to make the communities that I'm part of, especially my summer camp, just be as amazing as they can be. And an insight that I've gained, and was helped to gain this by my daughter, who is a similar personality to me, has an equally kind of overachieving bend to her, was to step back and realize that this year and this time and this season is not a time to overachieve. In fact, for some of us, it's a really good time to kind of get the job done and be okay being average. My daughter and I have exchanged the word mediocre a lot to talk about just how we can approach things and not get too caught up in all this stuff that, once again, whether it's our careers or our appearance or anything, it's just okay to step back and not feel like we have to overdo it at this stage. So those were a couple of just kind of personal updates, really mostly just thoughts that I've been having. The other update that I wanted to share with you is that you may not really know what I do, my kind of work in life, but I have several different things that I do, and that's par for the course with my personality. But first and most importantly, I own a summer camp. And that's been my family's business. My husband and I run it along with a great team of year-round staff. And that business has really taken a big blow this year because of the pandemic, because of, and a financial blow is what I mean by that. And so I have been trying to figure out with my team there how we can use our skills and be of service during this time. And so one of the things that I've been working on for the past couple months is called GATA, or the Gold Arrow Teacher Academy. And we've been doing monthly webinars and weekly emails with really great no prep or low prep activities that teachers can do to better connect with their students, whether it's online or live. I have long felt that teachers really would benefit from a lot of the camp counselor trainings that we do. Teachers really are mostly taught in credential programs about curriculum and perhaps some behavior modification activities and that kind of thing, but just the relationship building and connection and helping the kids connect with each other generally is not part of that. I am personally invested in education so much. I did teach for a little bit of time before I got into the camp world, and two of my daughters are teachers. My oldest daughter, Gretchen, is a high school English teacher, and my second oldest daughter, Meredith, is a kindergarten teacher. Both of them are online this fall, so I am really witnessing firsthand how hard they're working and how this is not what they were made to do, how they really would prefer to be with their kids. That's why they became teachers in the first place. So I'm really excited about GATA and encourage you to check that out. if it's something that you would be interested in, or you have a teacher in your life who would be interested in being part of that. But anyway, I digress. So camp is one of my main jobs. And with camp right now, besides doing planning for next summer, we are also offering these webinars and also checking in with our families to see what we can do to support them best during this time, and how we can, be in community with their kids and just help them and provide resources to our parents. The other big arm of what I spend my time on is my website, and specifically this podcast, the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. And I have told people for so long that probably this podcast is my absolute favorite thing to work on and do. And I have consistently put out a new weekly podcast for, I think it's been 3 straight years. I started doing every other week, and then I switched to once a week. But, this is already episode 157. So I've put out 157 episodes, which is really, really fun. And I really enjoy doing it. And of course, I don't do it for the money because I'm not paid to do it. And I haven't really been interested in taking on sponsors, nor have I the bandwidth to figure out how that works. So that I do. And the thing about it is, though, I do pay to have the audio produced. And I have a great producer, John Smoot of JRS Productions. And I also, through my camp, pay for help with the show notes and the kind of backup work of getting each week's podcast up and running. So there is a cost to it beyond my hours of investment. And so that's where I come to this invitation to you. I have set up a Patreon, which I don't ever like asking people for money, but I really want to use Patreon to figure out who out there among you who's listening are kind of my main people. I have had a lot of downloads and a lot of listens, which is really gratifying, but I'm actually more of a personal and in community kind of person. So I'd rather have a small group of people who we have more interaction and back and forth than larger and larger numbers of people who maybe listen, but I don't even really know if you listen to the whole episode or not. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes to my Patreon that I've set up now. And I invite you to join me if you are interested in being part of my ongoing decisions about this podcast, about guests you'd like to see me have on, about the frequency of episodes. I'd also like to invite you to be part of my next book that I've already started writing that is not a parenting book, it's more of a well-being book. And I'm sharing in it the research in positive psychology that corresponds with or doesn't correspond with biblical principles. These are 2 things that I have studied and really enjoy learning about, and I'm kind of putting them in combination to see what we can learn to thrive and be our best selves from this. So I invite you to join my Patreon, and if you'd like to just kind of have a chance to get to know me better on a more personal basis and hang out in community with me, that's going to be what I'm going to be doing in there. I'm going to start by having you just fill out either a little survey telling me what it is you need most right now and how you're doing and what you're finding helpful. Or you can always just send me an email too. So thank you so much for listening this week. I appreciate you being here. I know that we're all doing our very best right now, and most of the time this year that doesn't seem to be enough. Things still seem to keep going wrong regardless of how hard we're working and what we're doing. So I invite you to join me in stepping back and kind of prioritizing, perhaps picking just one project that you want to focus on this fall, whether it's a work-related project or something in your family or a relationship you want to work on, or maybe it's some kind of something for your own mental health. Whatever it is, I feel like we all need to step back at this point and really prioritize, because as I've learned in the last week, most of what we do or gather around us will or can disappear, but those things that are really, really important are generally the things that you wouldn't be able to take in a fire. It's more the relationships and the things you've learned and the things you've shared with others. So I wish you the best this week and this month and this year. And I would love to hear from you and hear your insights about what you're doing to make it through this challenging year that seems to keep throwing even more curveballs at us. So take good care. Thank you for listening, and we'll be in touch.